Hello, and welcome to this episode of From the Syllabus. I'm Lee Hall, an Associate Professor of Literacy Studies at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and today I'm going to be sharing with you something that I call Explore Projects. All right, so what is an Explore project? Well, I use Explore projects in my master's classes, and I'm getting ready to launch them in my undergraduate class this semester, so I'll have an update about how it goes with the undergraduate class later. But for the purposes of this, I'm talking about working with a master's class and with teachers that are currently practicing in their classroom. And so the Explore project, I implemented it as a way to allow my students to learn something of interest to them. So I wanted them to think very deeply about a topic or an issue, a question that they had related to the class that also connected to their career and what they wanted to work on, in terms of their own professional development, be able to merge those two together. And in doing so, I found that Explore projects are very authentic because it connects directly to problems of practice that the teachers have and allows them to dive in and explore those issues, if you will. And the other thing that comes out of the Explore project is it exposes others to a wide range of ideas and information. So because each person has their own individual project, as the students in the class are talking and sharing with one another, they are learning and getting all kinds of ideas and access to information that they would not have otherwise. All right, so the requirements for the Explore project, you're going to find that they're fairly loose. And I will tell you that some students are great with the fact that these are fairly loose requirements, and other students, of course, are a little more uncomfortable because they want things to be a little bit more rigid and defined. So expect some of that to come up naturally. But this is really what I tell the students. I ask them to decide on a question or a topic that they would like to explore. And I give them a few weeks to play around with that and to talk about it in class. And then I set a date 2 or 3 weeks into the semester where they need to make a decision. Sometimes students do change their topics, and that's worked out okay. But I don't promote that they be allowed to change it once they get started. I ask that they spend 60 minutes each week exploring their topic, and in my most recent iteration of doing the Explore projects, I gave them that 60 minutes in class each week. And that turned out to be very beneficial because, again, it allowed for students to help each other with problems. It allowed me to sit and talk with students about their projects, so it was definitely a good use of time. And then at the end, they were asked to give a presentation. And you'll notice that there aren't a lot of details around what it means to give a presentation, and that was intentional. And I told students that as we progressed through the semester, once we got near the end, a few weeks out, we would talk about what they wanted their presentations to look like and what would be meaningful to them. All right, so pretty loose directions here. So what do these things look like in action? Well, as I said before, some students really struggled with a lack of boundaries. They set their own boundaries in terms of having a question or topic, but I don't require things like they have to do, read so many articles or read so many books or produce a particular amount of resources. I just tell them, go learn about your topic. And then give a presentation about it. And so some students were very uncomfortable with this. Their work didn't suffer. They still produced really good work, but they just personally wanted, I think, things a little more rigid. That's just what they were comfortable with. But overall, students were easily able to select topics and engage with them, and they really enjoyed hearing about the range of topics that their peers were doing. So Explore projects were a very good use of time in this class. Students got a lot, not just out of what they did themselves, but out of hearing and talking to each other. Now, about maybe 3 weeks before the end of the semester, we talked about the presentation structure, and this was decided on as a class. So you might find that this works for your class, you might not. I actually wouldn't set this out and tell the class this is how it's got to be. I would have the discussion about what do you think makes sense. And so what came out of our discussion was the students decided that no one could take more than 5 minutes. You could talk for 30 seconds or you could talk for 5 minutes. It didn't matter, but you could not talk for more than 5 minutes. And during the presentations, I was the timekeeper on that. It was also decided that each person should select their own format for their presentation. Um, so nobody wanted to say, students didn't want to say we should all do a PowerPoint, for example. They could do anything that they wanted to do, okay? Presentation materials had to be shared on the class wiki so that everybody could have access to everybody's resources. And then the way that we structured this was after about 5 presentations, we would stop and have about a 10-minute Q&A session. So we held questions for 5 people, then stopped, had a short Q&A, did 5 more, stopped, had a short Q&A, etc. And that worked really well, and it kept things moving, but it also gave time for like a nice break to talk about what we've seen, as opposed to asking questions after each person or asking questions all at the end, that sort of a thing. All right, so final thoughts on the Explore project. One of the things that I would change is I would incorporate some way to make regular sharing and feedback a critical element. And I'm going to be working on that this semester, so I'll be sharing with you how that goes. What I found is every once in a while would ask people if they wanted to share. Sometimes they did, most of the time they didn't. But I think that it's beneficial for students to be talking about their work and getting input about it on a regular, sustained basis across the semester, and that was really missing this time, and I would definitely add that in. Expect that some students will be uncomfortable with the amount of freedom. I'd ask students to trust in the process and to move through that uncomfortableness. I would not change that. I would not put more restrictions on the project just to make them more comfortable. This is the process, and I think that they will benefit by going through it. And I will say that there were about 18 students in this class, and they decided that they all wanted to hear each other speak, as opposed to maybe breaking off into small groups or doing something on a smaller scale where they only heard a portion of students. And these presentations were the most engaging ever. I don't know if I've ever sat through 18 presentations and been genuinely interested and excited for each one. And the questions and the discussions around each one were very rich. So it was definitely a great use of time. All right, so if you have questions, you can reach me. I've got 2 different email addresses up here for you. You can also find my blog where I talk more about the Explore projects as well as other things that I'm doing in my teaching. And you can find me at leahall.wordpress.com.